Hello, I'm Brad Sherman from California's best named city, Sherman Oaks. With me here is my wife, Lisa, who has made a career at the State Department and officially disclaims any association with my remarks and may have to deny having ever met me by the conclusion of these remarks. It's a pleasure to be here with my colleague, Grace Ming, and an honor to be with you to honor Chris Dodd. I served for 18 years on the House Banking and Financial Services Committee, and I was afraid I would lose him. But today, he represents my constituents in Studio City, in Burbank, and throughout a vibrant American motion picture industry. Now, with 18 years completed in Congress and winning 10 primary and 10 general elections in a row, I claim to understand the American people, at least to some degree. And I want to contrast their views to what I tend to see here in Washington. I believe the American people are a bit more, when it comes to China, a bit more dovish when it comes to military matters, and a bit more hawkish when it comes to trade. We need to work to prevent military confrontation between our countries. I believe that part of the problem is excessive nationalism in China, the flames of which have been fanned recently. But we as Americans have to focus on those of our own thought patterns that could lead our policy astray. We have a national security establishment. We've tasked them to go identify emerging threats and to prepare for them. And so that's what they do. And they look for the threats to prepare for that they're comfortable preparing for. Look at American history. Since the Spanish-American War, every time we confront a uniformed state adversary, we emerge with glory and victory. And since the Philippine insurrection that followed the Spanish-American War, every time we face a non-symmetrical opponent, an ununiformed adversary, the experience has been painful, inglorious, and sometimes leads to failure. So it's not surprising that we would focus on finding a worthy, uniformed, symmetrical state actor as an opponent. And there's only one in the world, and that is China. And I fear that pivot toward Asia will end up meaning a military pivot toward China. What a waste. The islands that we're all talking about aren't islands, they're coral reefs, they're islets. There's no oil there. If they sit astride anything strategic, it's the trade route between the United States and China, which neither country would want to cut off in the South China Sea. If there were any oil there, it would belong to Japan, not to the United States, and Japan's not willing to spend more than 1% of its GDP on defending what they would be their oil if there was any oil, and there isn't any oil. But these islets are a pretext for excessive nationalism in Beijing, in Tokyo, and in Washington as well. Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, Iran, and ISIS are real, and vast oil fields under unpopulated islets are an illusion. We have a trade deficit. This year it's set to hit $334 billion. That's not just an all-time record in the U.S.-China trade relationship. That's an all-time record in mammalian life on this planet. And it's not just a one-time thing. That $334 billion is on top of chronic $300 billion deficits, which add up to $1 trillion in debt every 3 or 4 years, which reflect lost jobs that have been lost for a decade, and an American middle class that is suffering and is angry and will be heard in Washington in ways that we might find it difficult to imagine. This trade deficit isn't just a problem for the United States. It's a kind of crazy situation for China, which every year ships us $300 billion worth of goods, more than we ship them, and takes in lieu of real productivity pieces of paper, which they hope will be valuable someday. Keep hoping. Senator Dodd pointed out the numerical quotas on our movies getting into China. There are numerical quotas on the number of different types of shoes or textiles or electronic devices that can come from China into the United States. So I know that this is a room that would favor a continuation of the process-oriented trade policy that has marked the United States policy over the last 30 years. So you may disagree with me. But please don't assume that those who want a radical change of American trade policy are just too stupid or unschooled to understand the economic theory that underlines our current policies. The fact is that theory cannot possibly explain chronic $300 billion bilateral trade deficits. It's time to abandon the theory rather than to abandon the tens of millions of American families who are suffering today as a result of our adherence to it. I look forward to working with you toward a new policy in trade in general, in China in particular. Thank you.